I either don't understand the fair tax, or I don't understand how that doesn't evolve into a value-added tax. As a dairy farmer, what point do I get taxed on my product? When the milk leaves the market, when it leaves the farm, when it leaves...
Just retail.
Yeah, but I just see every opportunity for this thing to turn into a value-added tax. I've been a proponent for a fair tax or a flat tax, whatever you choose to call it, for 10 years. 10 years ago, I stood on the stage with Rick Larson when I ran against him for this seat after Jack Metcalf. Gentleman, Jack kept his word. After 3 terms, he left. They had a vacated seat. And I ran against Rick Larson 10 years ago. And we stood on the stage. You're going to love this. And we were debating what would happen to the $269 billion projected federal surplus. It's true. It's a true story. I said surplus. And that was due to the capital gains tax cuts during the Reagan administration. And if you look at the debt, it's gotten bigger and continues to grow. So you have to reduce taxes. You have to get the regulatory burden. You have to reject the value-added tax. You have to reject cap and trade. And frankly, you can't eliminate the Federal Reserve, eliminate the Department of Education. Lots of places we can go with those things. I still believe we need a strong military. I still believe in peace through strength. I don't think you can negotiate. You can keep peace in this country, protect our borders from a position of weakness and negotiation. Not for a second. I don't believe that. And frankly, one of the biggest issues for me is the immigration issue. And that is not rocket science, people. You just shut the doggone borders down and enforce the law. We're either a nation of laws and we believe in rule of law, or we don't. And God help us if we don't. And but I could go on and on and on here tonight. I'm not going to do that. I want to take questions. So I'll just say this about the campaign. Wasn't an easy decision for me to get in this. 22nd of December, we ran a poll 3 days before Christmas. Something else the Republican Party was responsible for. They ran my poll 3 days before Christmas. Not a good idea. And Rick Larson's re-elect numbers were 48% at that time. That's not real good for an incumbent of 10 years. We did a head-to-head. It was 48-24. We ran a poll last week in April, actually on the 22nd of April. And his numbers dropped another 4 points. And on head-to-head, we were 44-37. So we picked up 17 points in 13 weeks. We believe this is a very winnable race. Rick's voting record is deplorable. He's voted over 98%, with almost 99% with the Pelosi-Reid Obama agenda. And by the way, just recently voted to defeat Michelle Bachmann's amendment to freeze federal salaries and congressional pay raises. Voted against that. So something else to remember next time you see him in a candidate forum, which is right around the corner, I expect. So we're running the phone banks. We're obviously putting signs up and looking for volunteers and trying to raise the funds to get to win the race, do the TV ads. So you had your hand up.
Yeah. Let's get back to your position on defense for a minute. There's a difference between strong defense, which is for the purpose of defense, and a strong defense, which is for the purpose of defending the entire world.
Yeah. See, I don't believe where you got to be the world's policeman any more than anybody else in this room does. I believe I'm sort of a non-interventionist on this thing. If there's no national security issue, we don't belong there.
How would you then, to follow up that question, how would you move our GDP and our economy away from being a military industrial complex into being a capitalist nation again?
It's not going to happen overnight, but it's not impossible to do. We got to get manufacturing back in this country, something other than manufacturing weapons. And that's why I believe if you had a tax system that was fairer and simpler, whether it's a whether it's a sales tax or a flat tax, you need investment back into this country. Look, I read an article the other day, $13 trillion sitting on the sidelines because of all the uncertainty that's been created by this administration and this Congress with the VAT tax floating over their head, with cap and trade out there, with the health care, passage of the health care bill, the gift that keeps on giving or taking. Businesses aren't even sure how it's going to affect them. And let me tell you, I had a chance to talk to 2 businessmen in the last 2 weeks. And one guy says, I'm building 5 new stores. He says, you know where I'm building them, John? No, he's building them in British Columbia. He says, I can get a permit there faster and I can make money there. He says, I never in my life imagined, this guy has stores all over the western United States. So never imagined in my life I would have to do business internationally to make a living and make money. The other fella is Peter Bargreen, who owns Crown Distributing, by the way. Probably familiar with Crown Distributing. You'll see my signs on his beer trucks probably going all over the county. He's got 65 trucks. He's so angry. He just had to talk to his tax accountant after the passage of the health care bill. He has 7 new taxes to pay. I guess there's something like 17 woven throughout this whole entire thing, according to Paul Guppy, Washington Policy Institute. But Peter's tax rate went from 39.6% to 51.5%. He said, for the first time in my life, I'm paying the federal government more than I'm making. He says, you know, the other side of the Canadian border is starting to look pretty darn good. So as long as you've got these policies going on that are driving businesses out of this country, and an administration that wants to play the world's policeman, you're going to continue to feed that military industrial complex.
So it's not our fault because we want to make over $20 an hour?
No, I don't think it's your fault.
Thank you.
No, it's not your fault. As much as they'd like to blame it all on you. So, you know, those are sad stories, but there are jobs going out of this country. We need investment back into this country. We need people to feel confident enough in that they can invest in this country again and create the jobs. Until that happens, if these guys can, I'll tell you what, if you don't get anything out of me tonight, I hope you get a sense of urgency of how important this election cycle is. I don't think you'd be here if you didn't understand that, so I apologize for that. But I told my sons and my son-in-laws, I said, if we don't see a sea change in November in this country, I mean, not just electing the same old R's and D's, because frankly our problems are not about R&D. They're much, much bigger than all of that. But I told them, I said, if we don't see a sea change in November, I got to tell you, we're going to sit down as a family and we're going to figure out where we need to be in the next few years, because it's not about what it was a few years ago. The world is changing and it's going to continue to change very quickly, and it's going to be about surviving and how we're going to make it in future years. The world is changing. It's scarier than heck to me. It's the only reason I'm doing this. It isn't about me. It isn't about Republican, and it isn't about Democrat. It's about saving this republic. And you got to get back to those constitutional principles. You got to chase government back in the fold. It was Thomas Jefferson that said, let no more be said of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief with the change of the Constitution. That's what we got to do. We got to bind him down.
Adam said that liberty at home is generally eroded attributed to threats from abroad. And I think we're seeing a lot of that now. The war on terror and the war on drugs really eroding the Fourth Amendment, a lot of civil liberties. Where do you stand on those issues?
Would I support the Patriot Act? No, because I think they went too far with the Patriot Act.
What about McCain's new bill?
I'm not familiar with McCain's new bill. I'm scared to ask.
So you can throw a bag over your head.
Nah, well, no. You know what else? What else that Adam said too? He said we have no army and power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by religion and morality. Our Constitution is for a moral people. It is wholly inadequate for the governance of any other. You talk about terrorism, but you're talking about the war on drugs and those things. We have a problem. Now, and Adams wasn't advocating for theocracy. Adams was simply saying if you lose the moral underpinnings within your country, you lose it. You have, it's just like I was in the legislature. Geez, the 5 worst words, there ought to be a law. Don't ever say that. Don't ever say that to a legislator, because they'll find some knee-jerk cause and create a law they really don't need to create. And laws, if there's no moral underpinnings in a society, law means nothing. Because people will just choose to disobey the law. And frankly, because you've lost the moral underpinning, slowly being eroded in this country. I don't say lost entirely, but you've seen them slowly eroded. That's why you have more, that's a result of that, is more law and more law and more law, and bigger government and bigger government and bigger government.